Hello, everyone. I'm Vivek Atray, and today I'm talking about the art of writing. And being a writer myself, I think I'm reasonably qualified to talk about it. I've realized that I speak a lot about emotional intelligence, people skills, the art of getting things done, and convincing people about leading a team or leadership qualities. But I haven't done enough sessions on the art of writing. Writing is very much a part of my being, a part of my life, a part of what I am. I'm very happy to be talking about writing for about 25 minutes. I'll be very happy to take your questions also along the way. And if you look at my book, which is called Finding Success Within, which is the third book that I've written. And luckily for me, my fourth book is coming out soon, which is going to be a collection of my column, which is Random Forays. But let's talk about the art of writing. First of all, why do we want to write? There are a few reasons. Everyone cannot be an author, but everyone can be a writer. Okay, that's the first quote from this session. Everyone cannot be an author, but everyone can be a writer. Even when you're writing out the kitchen list, you need some writing skill. Maybe only spellings. Maybe you need to express yourself in some other way. You're sending a text to your spouse or to your parents or to your daughter or son. You need to write. So basic writing skills are ingrained in all of us. In fact, Indians are very good at texting. And you know that several countries don't prefer texting. They prefer more the talking part and phoning each other or discussing things through voice. But a lot of people are good at texting in India, and they text rapidly and frantically, so they write. But there are serious writers in the making who I think need to write a little more than they usually do, because writing is something which brings out the best in us. Writing is therapy, and therapy of the kind that can bring out your expression, your inner feelings, your pains, your angst, your love, your hate, or your pressure. So writing is something which can help you to release. And my daughter Kavya does a course on writing therapy, so I know from her that writing actually makes you feel elevated, makes you feel lighter, makes you feel more creative, makes you feel as if you are, buoyant. If you've written a page, these days we don't write by hand or by pen, we type, but we still call it writing. And we don't call it typing, thankfully. We really need to do that more often because we feel better. It is therapy. And supposing you're feeling low about something that happened to you, or something that is bound to happen or likely to happen. Um, of course, you shouldn't be feeling like that before you get married. There's nothing wrong with getting married. But you may be feeling like that before an exam, or you may be feeling like that before a game, or before an interview, or perhaps you're feeling like that because of the pandemic, feeling low and anxious. And psychologists will tell you that anxiety levels are high these days, especially because many of us keep releasing and sharing negative news. So I must take this opportunity to tell you, don't type out things which are negative, don't share them, forward them. Only share constructive, important, and really positive stuff. So, writing is therapy. Secondly, creative writing brings out the juices of life. That means that you start living a little more. Any creation, any creativity, music, art, writing, could be cooking or photography, trekking, anything that is different from the norm, which office goers are supposed to be part of. Any office goer who plays the guitar on a Sunday is creative. Writing brings out in more depth your real self. And if you really look at it, prose or poetry, you have to think before you write. The art of writing is about thinking. A lot of writing is thinking. Because when you're thinking, only then you're writing. I mean, without thinking, you're only writing when you're copying notes from someone in class, or when you're copying somebody else's examination sheet surreptitiously, or sneakily in the exam, then you're not thinking, you're just copying, copying, copying. But we're not talking about copying here. We're talking about creative writing. And creative writing is something which will make you feel as if you are venturing into something which is, fulfilling, makes you fulfilled. So the second thing that I'd like to say to you, write for the reason that you need to be more creative. Even if you're a musician and you are an artist or a painter or a chef, write about your cooking, write about your music, write about your painting. Because when you write, you actually come to know things which you may not know about yourself. And you may actually express yourself much better than you think. Some people say that I can't write for nuts, I don't have the vocabulary. So the third point that I want to make today is vocabulary is only a part of writing. Now we know that Shashi Tharoor has the best vocabulary in the world. I don't think anyone has challenged him till now. He even actually says that he invented a few words in the English language. I don't know if you know that. He says that preponed was not a word before he invented preponed, the opposite of postponed. He says that the opposite of postponed in the English dictionary was advanced. So the meeting has been advanced from 5 p.m. to 4 p.m. He made it preponed somewhere in the 1970s, 80s, he says. I don't know how old he was. But the point is that he and you and I do not need to be alike. We don't need to be creators of words. We don't need to be encyclopedias. We don't need to be walking, talking dictionaries. We just need to be expressive. And one great skill while writing, now let's come to the skill of writing, is to be able to edit your writings mercilessly. When I write, I make sure that I go through my piece at least twice. Whatever I've written, I write a column which is fortnightly. That is where my best writing comes. I don't think my books are as good as my column, by the way, I must confess. 3 novels, 2 novels, and 1 book. And the fourth one is going to be a collection of my columns. So my column writing is where I'm at my best, where I can actually bring out myself and my thoughts and more than I am. Actually, I really wonder how I'm able to write on so many topics. It is because I write and I'm into the habit of writing that I'm able to express myself a little more. And I know that I have to express myself here. And suddenly the brain starts opening up in parts which I never knew. I never knew I had these ideas here somewhere, or I don't know where they are. Maybe they're in the painting behind me here, this side. The point, the point is that these ideas are somewhere, and you need to bring them out. You need to write them out. So if you can write them out, if you can share them with a friend to start with mummy or papa or nanaji or your granduncle or your pen friend. We used to have pen friends when we were in school, the youngsters of today who don't know pen friends. You have, of course, Instagram friends, so you don't need pen friends. And they're much more friendly. So, so pen friends are those who we used to write letters to and exchange letters with by hand. And we didn't even know that. Never met them. I don't know how we used to find them. But we used to. So even like that, when you're writing something, share something with a friend. If that friend tells you some feedback, and ask for blunt feedback, ask for direct feedback without holding back any punches, and ask them to tell you what is this, how good is it. Say you write poetry. Now I'm not a poet. I'm a writer of prose and stories, but I know that poets are great writers. They're after all they're writing while expressing. It is said that poetry can be written only when you're in love or in pain. Perhaps in the pandemic also you can write poetry. Three ways to write poetry, right? So poetry is something which you need to really bring out yourself into. You are that writing. So Paramahansa Yogananda, whom I follow a lot and who's the author of the autobiography of the yogi, he said, the knower, the act of knowing, and the known become one. The knower, that's me, let's say, the act of knowing something, and the known, the person or the God that you're trying to know, become one. So in writing, the writer, the act of writing, and what you've written, they become one. They are you. That writing is you. You are somehow transferring your own personality onto that sheet of paper or onto that those pixels on the computer, which are going to be emailed to the editor of some paper. Now let's come to some practical tips. Practical tips about writing are that first you need to have an idea in your mind. Supposing you have to write a 700 word piece. Authors and writers talk in terms of words. We don't talk in terms of pages. So if you want to pretend you're a writer or an author, just talk in terms of words. I wrote 800 words last week. I wrote 20,000 words last year. So words, have an idea in your mind. This idea will make me write this particular piece. So, supposing I have to write my column, let me give you a secret on that. I start thinking about it 10 days before I have to write it. I told you, writing is about thinking. You can't just write without thinking. And 10 days before I'm thinking, what is it that I'm going to write? What points am I going to put into it? I can note them down into my phone or computer or piece of paper. That these are the topics, subtopics. A very good idea is to note down things while you're on the move. You're having a shower, you think of something. You're on the walk, you think of something. And where are you going to write it? Tomorrow you'll forget it. So those ideas need to be encapsulated somewhere in your smartphone or in your somewhere where you will retrieve them at the time of writing. And that is the time when your writing skills will enable you to bring that idea into fruition, into life, onto that column. So maybe a trend in society today, you're writing about, let's say, dating and relationships and breakups. Or let's not talk about breakups. Let's talk about the process of falling in love. You're writing about that, how you discover someone new. There are so many ideas you can bring in. You can say that I was at a cafe and there was a boy and a girl next table, and I couldn't help overhearing. Anyway, boys and girls are very interesting when together. And so they were talking about each other, trying to introduce themselves to each other. And I'm like listening, and I'm thinking that this conversation is interesting. And suddenly the boy confesses to the girl something. I had a girlfriend 2 years ago, and we went out for 6 months and whatever. I am a writer. I get ideas. So I write about this couple in my write-up without naming them. I don't even know their name, of course. I don't want to defame anyone or pry into their privacy. But I have people on the neighboring table whom I want to talk about. And I am right about, sorry. And I'm writing about them without naming them, but I have an example. So I am a walking, talking writer. I repeat that. I'm a walking, talking writer. The act of writing is only the final stage of the act. It is the final stage of putting your words to the keyboard or to the paper. You have to think for 2 weeks before you get there. Only then, for 2 weeks or 1 week or 5 days or 2 days or 1 day, that thinking process is what matters in the art of writing. And noting down a couple of course, you can't keep on writing every day. I mean, some people may be doing that. As soon as I thought of something, I wrote 4 sentences. And then I wrote another 4 sentences next morning after breakfast before going to office if I had time. And then I wrote another 2 sentences at night and another 2 sentences next day. I have actually written my first novel was written like that, Move On Bunny. Move On Bunny was written on the move. I was on the move as well. And I would, when people used to ask me, are you Bunny Kapoor? I said, no, it was very naughty. So I used to write 2 to 3 sentences, 4 sentences, whatever time. I was a busy person. For some reason, I was very busy too. Some organization, very big organization in the country used to keep me busy. So I used to keep on writing whenever I could. Today, I try to think up my piece and note down points and then sit down when the day comes for me to write and write it at a stretch for 700 words. That's my column length. However, if I'm writing a book, then come to writing a book, then I need to live that book. If you have a character in your book, his name is Vaibhav Kumar. I'm Vivek. I need to become Vaibhav Kumar. I need to think like him. I need to perhaps speak like him. And he is my imagination. I need to get into his shoes and his clothes and his skin and become him. And I'm going to be a walking, talking web of Kumar. And he may be younger than me, older than me, he may be different from me, and he may be. Hopefully, I typically write about cheerful people. So hopefully, he won't be an angry kind of person. But you can write about angry people. I have no problem. So you have to live that person you're writing about. Your protagonist, your character has to be that character who is you. And then you become that protagonist of your novel. So let's talk about writing novels. The art of writing is also about writing novels. A novel needs to have a story. The idea of the story has to be there in your mind. You need to work upon it. You need to note it down. You need to write the abstract. You need to write down what is going to start the story, how is it going to develop, and where is it going to finally fructify and reach and culminate. Where is it reaching? And those of you who are Hindi speaking and want to write in Hindi, one day I'll hold a session for you in writing skills in Hindi. But much of what I'm saying, everything that I'm saying is the same. Language is not a barrier to the idea process and the writing process. Whatever language you're writing in, Tamil, Telugu, or French, or Spanish. I even got one of my pieces translated into Spanish recently. Very happy about that. But writing is a novel is about ideating the story, making a draft synopsis, and then introducing the characters. Your main character, or two main characters, or three main characters, and then the rest of the people, the sidees as I call them. When I was watching movies while growing up, I would always notice the sidees. And I used to have names for them, but I didn't know their names as a boy. And there was one who was always a policeman. Later I got to know, I don't want to call him Sidey now. His name was Mr. Jagdish Raj. And he was actually the father of Anita Raj, the actress. And he was Sidey number one for me. But he was there in every movie, and he was a police officer. And there were two other Sideys, Sidey number 2 and 3, whose names I don't know even today. I could find them on Google, but I don't. And they were in Sholay, all three of them, I think, or at least these Sidey number 2 and 3. So you need to have these Sideys also ready in your plan for your novel. You need to know who all is going to be in my novel. And you know the theme also. You can't write a story without knowing the theme. You need to know if it's a murder mystery, is it going to be a comedy or a rom-com kind of thing, or is it going to be a dramatic situation? Is it going to be a relationship story? Is it going to be a kind of fact-finding story? People go and discover something in the dungeons of somewhere. So, what is your novel going to have, and what impact do you want it to create? That, and who's going to be the target audience? What is your language going to be like? Is your language going to be pure English, pure Hindi? Is it going to be English? These days, it's very acceptable to have dialogues in Hindi in an English novel. As a chai wala would speak, not chai wala, sorry, as a newspaper wala would speak, you speak like that. You become the buyer of a newspaper, and the newspaper wala says, "Saab khule paise nahi hai, aap de do." और यू आस्क हिम कि ये बताइए कि ये यहाँ पे कोई ऐसे रंग का आदमी आया था अभी काली शर्ट पहन के? नहीं नहीं, हमने देखा नहीं, हमको तो यही दिख रहा है जो हमारे सामने न्यूज़पेपर है, और ये चेंज हमारे पास नहीं है. तो बेसिकली इफ यू ब्रिंग इन अ फ्यू डायलॉग्स फ्रॉम the real world, it may be more impactful. I tend not to do that because my Hindi in English is not very good. Hindi is good if I write only Hindi, but thinking in both languages becomes difficult for me. I can do it, but I have avoided it in my two novels. and I think I'm going to avoid it in my next one also. But some words, some phrases of the local dialect or proverbs or some characterizations can be in another language. Then your novel has to flow. Your novel has to move. It cannot be stagnating. You can't just describe the scene. The sunset was like this, the lake was still, people were walking around, and the breeze was like this, and the trees were swaying. That's fine. That's all good. But then something needs to happen. Somebody needs to walk through and talk to someone, or hit someone on the head, or joke with someone, or buy chana kulcha or something. Something needs to happen in the book. So you need to make it move forward, make it interesting. Of course, you can have episodical novels which are full of banter and jokes and even dialogues of the other kind, any kind, and that also is possible. Have a lot of dialogue in your novel, people talking to each other. Like in the movies, we don't. I mean, only some great films are films with very few dialogues. Otherwise, dialogues are what make characters interact with each other. Of course, they can interact in other ways also, but mainly dialogue. And you have to understand how they come forward, and how they relate with each other. Now, if you're writing a non-fiction book, it's much easier. I think, personally speaking, you need to research much more. That's the tough part. You need to have a lot of facts before you. You need to have your data correct. You can't be writing incorrect facts. You can't be writing incomplete books on a topic. Supposing you're writing on economic policies of India, it's a very dull subject, but it's important. Go ahead and write it. But research. And it's very important to know what is happening in the economy of India. Read The Economist, read and listen to people. Don't watch too much TV news, and just get into your subject. If you're writing a motivational book like my Finding Success Within, then you really don't need to do much research. It's a non-fictional book, but you need to draw upon whatever you are or you have. If you're writing about, if you're writing a poetry book, then obviously it's coming from within. You're not really researching about poetry. Poets don't research that much. I mean, they may be researching Shelley and Keats and things, but they don't research about the kinds of flowers that are blooming in their garden. They're not going to get into the botany of it. They have to understand the kind of the impact that the flowers are having upon them, or their mindset, or their moods. So poetry is an altogether artistic kind of way of writing. Now I am going to open it for questions, and I'm going to ask you to ask me questions on the chat box. But I am going to tell you some more tips before that. Okay, somebody needs guidance for IAS coaching. That's also later for later. Okay, then somebody's saying my favorite place for thinking is the washroom. Very good, Mr. Bamri. Well done, and well good to tell us that very good idea. I did mention the shower. If you're writing, another type of writing is writing an essay, or writing prose, writing something about a particular topic. In that also you have to have structure, a beginning, some points, a conclusion, an example or two, a quote or two, and try not to be hackneyed. Try not to repeat your phrases. If you've just written that it had a deleterious effect upon the proceedings, you can't say deleterious again after two paras. Use some other word which says something which diminishes the aura, or something which is impactful in the negative sense. What I'm trying to say is, do not repeat expressions in the same column, or in the same essay, or in the same write-up, or also don't repeat expressions in the even in the next week. You can't keep on repeating the same word again and again. Some people have a big thing about repeating the thing. I also have I must confess, I have a takiya kalam, which is the point is. So I keep saying the point is, the point is. But I don't want to keep saying it. I want to, this is of course about public speaking for a minute. But if you're writing something, again, you have to be careful that you are, able to change your language, or use different languages. And if you're going to be a literary kind of writer, then of course you really have to flower as a writer and use different expressions. Create your own expressions. Maybe not words like Mr. Tharoor is totally out of syllabus for us, but we need to create our own expressions. Our ways of writing have to be created. We can't be hackneyed, we can't be routinized in our way of writing. Okay, I have a question from Ankur Kapoor. He's writing a book on financial management in healthcare in the UK, but the challenge is there are already a few books in the market on the subject. How to select a publisher? Well, you have to write impressively, and you have to write a very impressive email, Ankur. More impressive than your book should be the email that you're writing to publishers or to the literary agents. So the last tip I'm giving you, getting published is not an easy point. The writer or the author has three avatars: the writing avatar, the getting published avatar, and the third is the marketing promotion avatar. So when I'm done with my book, then I become a kind of promoter of my book. So you are in the second stage where you're looking for a publisher. I think you write a very impressive email describing your book, attach that book. Ritu Raj is asking, whenever I write, my vocabulary and sentence formation makes obstacles. Well, you need to work harder, Ritu Raj. I think reading, and this is my most important tip at the end, read a lot. If you read a lot of books, read Woodhouse, read Harari, read Paramahansa Yogananda, read the Dalai Lama, read Nandan Nilekani, Sudha Murthy, read Enid Blyton, Agatha Christie. I'm reeling off authors here. Read Neville Cardus, read Premchand, read Tagore, read anyone who you feel will bring out the best in you. Then your obstacles will go. Ayush is asking, how does one not get bogged down if one's writing piece is not acknowledged? Yeah, so that's like Ayush, anything in life doesn't come easy. And initially, we have to work hard. It's like trying to impress a girl or a boy, trying to impress the boss, trying to impress the parents, trying to impress the teacher, trying to impress the publisher. Same thing. So it doesn't come easy. You keep working hard and you'll get there. Nikhil is asking, how can I improve my imagination without bewildering and losing focus from a particular task? Yeah, so that's a very good question. I think that's the question of the day. Imagination doesn't come from outside. Of course, you see something and your imagination improves, but it comes from within. And imagination and inspiration are linked to each other. I mean, you can't be inspired if you can't be imaginative if you're not inspired. If you have that josh and enthusiasm to write, then you will have imagination as well. So you need to imagine that scene on a cloudy morning, foggy morning, where the station is not packed, just two or three people are there, and you're sitting on a bench, and there's a dog for company, and a chai wala, again the chai wala, the coffee wala for company, and then you have people standing around. So it's okay. I mean, you have to imagine that scene very deeply. So go through life looking around, opening your eyes, being observant and nice. Ankur is asking, can you please give a brief about your experience to reach out for publishers for finding success within? Yeah. So luckily for me, I was able to write to publishers, and I found that this publisher was actually looking for me. So because it was my third book. So the first book is where you're really stuck. And the first book I remember, Move On Bunny, and my second one was Googly Bounces Back. In fact, I had all three at different publishers. But for Move On Bunny, I was able to find a publisher after a lot of struggle. And I'll close with Nicholas Sparks' story. He's a very good author and published author, of course. Movies have been made, A Walk to Remember, etc. He says he found a publisher with great difficulty, Ankur. So anyone who's not finding a publisher, don't worry, keep at it. And one day he says, I suddenly got my third manuscript was accepted through a young 24-year-old agent, literary agent, who said that your book is being bought by the Warner Brothers for $1 million. That was 30 years ago. So it will happen, Uncle, don't worry. Last question, Ayush is saying, should we then purposely write in order to impress others or what we feel like? No, write what you feel like, but improve your writing with time. I think I have improved as a writer. I'm better than I was. So hopefully I'll get even better. Thank you. It's 30 minutes and we've had a wonderful session. I'll keep having sessions on writing or speaking or other aspects of life. Stay connected and share this with others, and keep smiling and write a lot. Thank you. Jai Hind.